A pastor stood in front of thousands of people on Juneteenth weekend in 2026 and did something almost no one expects from a Sunday morning stage. He didn't just preach about heaven, he unveiled a business plan. A plan to build houses, launch banks partnerships, feed families, and create 1 million Black-owned businesses by the year 2030. His name is Jamal Bryant, and if you think church is just about hymns and offering plates, this man is about to change your mind completely. Because what's happening inside Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Stonecrest, Georgia, right now isn't just religion. It's a full-blown economic movement, and it's making some people very uncomfortable. Let's rewind for a second, because to understand why this moment matters, you need to understand the man behind it. Jamal Harrison Bryant was born on May 24, 1971, in Boston, Massachusetts, the son of Bishop John Richard Bryant, a senior leader in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So this isn't a man who stumbled into ministry. He was raised inside it, third generation deep, groomed for the pulpit before he even understood what that meant. He went on to study at Morehouse College in Atlanta, one of the most storied historically Black institutions in the country, and later earned his Master of Divinity from Duke University. He picked up a doctorate in ministry from the Graduate Theological Foundation, and along the way, he spent time as the National Youth and College Director of the NAASP, leading tens of thousands of young activists in nonviolent organizing. That combination, part preacher, part organizer, part businessman, is the exact formula that would define his entire career. In the year 2000, at just 29 years old, Bryant founded Empowerment Temple Lane Church in Baltimore, Maryland. He started with barely more than 40 members. Within a decade, that congregation had exploded past 10,000 people. He became known as one of the youngest pastors to ever lead a megachurch in America, and Baltimore made him a household name, a fiery, media-savvy preacher who blended sermons with social commentary in a way that felt fresh, urgent, and relevant to a younger generation. But 18 years in, something shifted. In late 2018, Bryant walked away from the church he built from nothing, and he moved to Atlanta to take over one of the most storied and complicated pulpits in the country, Birth Missionary Baptist Church. That transition alone was massive news. Birth had been led for decades by the legendary and deeply controversial Bishop Eddie Long, whose ministry ended under the shadow of sexual abuse allegations before his death in 2017. The church tried one successor who didn't stick. Then, in December 2018, leadership turned to Bryant. He was stepping into a pulpit with a complicated legacy, a congregation still healing, and expectations that were sky high. And instead of playing it safe, Bryant did something bold. He immediately reoriented the church's identity, not away from faith, but toward a much broader definition of what faith should accomplish. In his own words, delivered on more than one occasion, the church cannot just be a place where people shout on Sunday morning and go home with nothing to show for it come Monday. That philosophy is the thread that connects everything that's happened since. Because in June of 2026, on Juneteenth weekend, Bryant stood up during a 2-hour Sunday service and announced something he called BLACKGROUND. Think of it as an entire economic ecosystem built inside a church. It has 4 pillars. The first is Homeground, centered on New Birth Village, a housing development designed to turn lifelong renters into homeowners. The second is Common Ground, a food security initiative that runs bi-weekly distributions to combat hunger in the surrounding community. The third is Higher Ground, focused on scholarships, skilled trades training, and civic and voter education. And the fourth, maybe the most ambitious of all, is Economic Ground, an ambitious mandate to help launch 1 million new Black-owned businesses by the year 2030. That is not a small promise. That is a moonshot, wrapped in a Sunday sermon. The centerpiece of it all is New Birth Village, and the numbers behind it are genuinely staggering. The church is converting 35 acres of debt-free, church-owned land it already fully owns with no mortgage attached, into a residential community of approximately 390 homes. The estimated cost of the project runs around $40 million, and it's being built through a public-private partnership model, meaning the church isn't funding it entirely alone. It's bringing in development partners while contributing the land itself as the foundation. Groundbreaking happened on June 21st, 2026, during Juneteenth weekend, and Bryant stood on that dirt and made a promise that got clipped and shared across every Black media outlet in the country. He said this project is happening while the current governor is still in office, and it's happening before the next one takes the mansion. It was a line about urgency, about building now, not waiting for permission from politics. And here's the part that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. Demand for these homes is off the charts. Phase 1 of the project includes just 87 units. The waiting list already has 3,000 families on it. 3,000 families waiting for 87 homes. That ratio alone tells you everything you need to know about the housing crisis facing Black families in Metro Atlanta and honestly across much of the country. And the data backs up why this matters so much. A 2025 report from Redfin found that Black homeownership in America had fallen to a 4-year low of 43.9%, down from 3% just the year before, driven by rising unemployment, high interest rates, and worsening affordability. A separate February 2026 study from LendingTree found that Black households remain drastically underrepresented in home ownership across the 50 largest metro areas in the country. So when Bryant says home ownership is the anchor for generational wealth in America, and that a lot of people in the Black community are missing that opportunity, he's not just preaching a talking point. He's responding to a very real, very documented, and worsening economic gap. And notably, the entire New Birth Village project is being developed and constructed by an all-Black team of contractors, planners, and construction professionals, which Bryant has framed as its own form of economic circulation, keeping the dollars and the jobs inside the community the project is meant to serve. Now, housing wasn't Bryant's first move into economic activism at New Birth. Before BLACKGROUND, before the groundbreaking ceremony, there was Target. And this is where things get genuinely complicated, because the story depends a lot on who's telling it. In January 2025, Target announced it was scaling back its diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments, including a previously announced pledge to invest more than $2 billion into Black-owned businesses. That decision came shortly after Donald Trump's re-election and his executive orders targeting corporate day policies nationwide. The backlash was immediate. 3 Minnesota-based activists, Nikema Levy-Armstrong, Monique Cullors-Doty, and Jaylani Hussein, were actually the first to call for a boycott of Target that same month. But it was Bryant who took the idea and turned it into a national movement. Starting on Ash Wednesday, March 5, 2025, he called for a 40-day Lenten boycott he branded the Target Fast. And it spread like wildfire through churches and faith communities across the country. The boycott made 4 specific demands of Target: fulfill the $2 billion commitment to Black businesses, deposit $250 million across 23 Black-owned banks, open 10 retail training centers at historically Black colleges and universities, and reversed the decision to scale back day. During the boycott, Target stock took a real hit, dropping to as low as $88.73 a share in early April 2025, a massive fall from over $266 a share back in November 2021. The company's longtime CEO, Brian Cornell, was eventually ousted amid the fallout. Bryant has claimed the boycott cost the company billions of dollars in lost sales. Though those specific figures haven't been independently verified by outside economists, who point out that broader retail headwinds were also squeezing the company at the same time. The boycott stretched on for a full year, nearly 10 times longer than a traditional 40-day fast, before Bryant officially declared it over in March 2026. And when he did, he claimed victory, saying Target had met 3 of the 4 original demands, falling short only on the $250 million bank deposit commitment. He famously described why faith leaders had zeroed in on Target specifically, joking that the company was, in his words, the only Fortune 500 retailer that had earned itself an affectionate nickname from Black shoppers. But not everyone was ready to celebrate. The 3 original Minnesota organizers who started the boycott pushed back hard on Bryant's framing, arguing that Target hadn't actually made any real concessions and that ending the boycott was premature. Some activists accused Bryant of taking outsized credit for a movement he didn't start. It even got messy for a moment when Bryant initially posted something suggesting the boycott had simply failed, which sparked immediate backlash from supporters, forcing him to clarify that the fast, as a specific spiritual practice, had ended, but the broader movement toward economic accountability had not. By 2026, Target stock had actually recovered more than 20% year to date, and the company put out a statement thanking the communities it serves while pivoting its strategy toward what it called everyday families. That tension between Bryant's economic activism and the reality of measuring its true impact is honestly a pattern that shows up again and again in his ministry, and it extends right into how he handles money inside his own church walls. Bryant has made headlines for challenging the entire concept of traditional tithing. During Easter services amid ongoing economic strain, instead of asking congregants to simply drop cash into the offering plate, he's instructed them to bring food donations and practical community resources to the altar instead. It's a small gesture on the surface, but it's a genuinely radical reframing of what a church even asks of its members, shifting the entire transaction from purely spiritual currency into tangible material support for people who are struggling right now. And of course, none of this happens without controversy trailing right behind it, because when you build a platform this large and this loud, you become a target yourself. In January 2026, a deeply unsettling video went viral out of New Birth. A man, described as a self-identified white evangelical street preacher who had reportedly driven all the way from Alabama, walked into the church during a live Sunday service, positioned himself near the sanctuary entrance, and began screaming condemnations at the congregation while filming himself. Witnesses say he called Bryant a wicked dog and warned the congregation they would burn, all while accusing the church of racism and moral corruption. Security eventually removed him from the property, and the church filed a complaint that resulted in a no trespass order from DeKalb County. But Bryant didn't let it go quietly. He took to his podcast and social media, publicly demanding the man's arrest and drawing a pointed comparison to a separate, unrelated disruption at a Minnesota church earlier that year, where the U.S. Attorney General had publicly vowed zero tolerance for attacks on houses of worship. Bryant's message was blunt. If that same energy exists for protecting one church, It needs to exist for protecting all of them, including Black ones. As of the reporting available, the man's identity was never publicly released, and no arrest had been announced. Then there's the matter of Bryant's personal finances, which the media loves to dig into whenever they get the chance. In September 2025, Bryant quietly sold his roughly 50,300 square foot Atlanta mansion for approximately $882,000. And he did it with zero public fanfare, no announcement, nothing. It only came to light later through media digging, sparking a wave of speculation about why the sale happened so quietly and where he and his family relocated to next. For a man who spends so much of his public life pushing housing equity and generational wealth for others, that kind of personal real estate move inevitably invites extra scrutiny, fair or not. And if you thought the drama stopped there, you'd be wrong. Because January 2026 also gave us one of the more talked about moments of Bryant's tenure, and it had absolutely nothing to do with sermons or economics. It was about a dress. At the United Negro College Fund's Atlanta Mayor's Masked Ball on December 20th, 2025, an event that ultimately raised more than $4 million for Boo scholarships, Bryant's wife, Dr. Carrie Turner Bryant, wore a flesh-toned gown with black lace detailing. Photos hit social media, and within hours, the internet exploded with commentary, some of it complimentary, a lot of it not. With critics calling the look inappropriate for the wife of a prominent pastor and accusing it of creating the illusion of nudity. Bryant did not sit quietly on the sidelines. During a fiery New Year's Eve service just days later, he addressed the backlash head-on from the pulpit, defending the dress and, by extension, his wife, telling the congregation and the internet at large that he personally bought it, that he liked it, and that critics simply lacked the exposure and worldliness to appreciate it. He went further, reminding everyone that she was married to him, not to her online critics. Dr. Carrie Bryant, who holds both a Master of Divinity and a doctorate herself, and serves as an executive pastor at New Birth, later addressed the moment publicly too, pointing out that there's no manual for what a modern pastor's wife is supposed to look like or wear. Not everyone was charmed by the clapback. Some fellow clergy members openly criticized Bryant's response as demeaning rather than defensive. But true to form, the Bryants leaned into the moment with humor days later, posting a playful AI-generated image of Carrie in an exaggeratedly modest, church-approved denim dress and sneakers, captioning it as their concession to the critics while still clearly standing their ground. So, where does all of this leave us? You've got a pastor who inherited one of the most complicated pulpits in Black American religious history, and instead of playing it safe, he's used it to launch a national boycott against a Fortune 500 retailer, break ground on a $40 million housing development with 3,000 families already lined up for it, challenge the very definition of tithing, and set an almost unbelievable goal of helping launch 1 million Black-owned businesses within the next 4 years. Along the way, he's weathered street preachers storming his sanctuary, media digging through his real estate records, and a fashion controversy that somehow became a national conversation about faith, marriage, and respectability politics. Whether you see Jamal Bryant as a visionary reshaping what the Black church can be in the 21st century, or as a media-savvy figure whose bold claims sometimes outpace verified results, one thing is undeniable. He has made generational wealth a Sunday morning conversation, not just a Monday morning problem, and in doing so, he has put the entire Black church tradition of economic self-reliance right back in the national spotlight. So tell me in the comments, Do you think this model, church as economic engine, is the future of ministry, or is it a dangerous blurring of faith and finance? Either way, this is a story that is nowhere near finished. Subscribe, because the next chapter of BLACKGROUND is just getting started.